Hello, hello, one and all, and welcome to another episode of Interstellar Radio, but not just any episode, potentially our last episode, as unfortunately, esports winter has hit us even here in space, in Supernova, in Interstellar Radio. But for potentially the last time, at least this split,
We'll call it
welcome
a
to Interstellar
hiatus.
Radio. A hiatus, yeah, but we'll call it a hiatus. We'll be back. And if you don't know, we're a podcast focused on NACL content, partnered with Supernova and with NRG Kia. Hosting Interstellar Radio for this pre-hiatus episode will be myself still, along with my co-host Gordo, and our guest for tonight, Coach Sneezes, one of the few coaches who has been on both sides of relegations, has been in the NACL and been in the qualifiers. Pardon me, he's done it all. Welcome, Sneezes. How are you doing today?
I'm good. Fortunately, haven't done it very successfully, but happy to be here. And we'll get into the relegation stuff later because it'll be a fun conversation. But no, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah, 100%. And you know what? The fact that you've done both sides means you've been successful, at least by my books. And speaking of which, of books and facts and truths, Sneezes, you know where this is headed. 2 truths and a lie. We like to ask all our guests to do that. Do you have your 2 truths and a lie prepared?
Yeah. I think we got a little ahead of it, but I'll just jump right in.
Okay.
I have failed the relegation tournament from both a promotion team and a relegation team side. I have a master's degree in psychology, and when I got hired at my current job at OC Esports, I quit my job under less than a month's notice and moved all the way across the country.
Okay.
Number one, I know is true.
Yes.
both are Team Fish Taco.
Yep.
Yeah, I believe that is correct. So
yeah, both in 2023.
Yeah, we're narrowed down.
50-50. You guys can hedge if you want.
We can.
Do you have a master's in psychology? I gotta admit, Caesar, for all the time we talked, I have never asked about your background.
I thought he said
level.
before, and maybe this is cheating because it's off stream, but I thought he said before we started recording that he is in grad school.
Oh, true.
I could be.
He could be going for a
though.
second degree.
Yeah.
He could go. You could get another one. There's no rules about only having one, but it makes me skeptical of number 2. So I think that's the hedge. I think the hedge is that number 2 is the lie. But RMC, you can choose whether to agree or disagree before we lock that in.
I think if I recall correctly, your OC job was pretty short notice. So quit in a month.
But would someone really quit their job and move all the way across the country just to coach League of Legends? You got to ask yourself if that's.
But you also did it for the degree. There was a degree involved as well. So, you know what? I could believe that. You know what? I think the master of psychology. I think Gordo brought up a great point. I actually did not make that connection, but you're right. Like if he's doing.
Yeah, that is the lie. Good job. I'm actually just finishing my MBA, so I'm done in the spring here. But yeah, not psychology, not studying psychology. I'm terrible at analyzing people and reading people. So all good, but no, good job.
Thank you. Even
stuff.
You're definitely good at analyzing League of Legends, and as a coach, I guess that's the most important thing there. So, Steve, I was going to ask you after this, like, what have you been up to nowadays? But you've kind of partially answered that. I want to see if, I want to give you the opportunity if you want to talk anything more about what you've been doing, because your background was, I remember I met you first in Dare Gaming, but you were in OQs before that. That was like back in 2021, 2022.
Yeah, I started in 21. We did this team in the fall or like the summer that year called Ping is the Problem. And that was a really fun team, but we were just getting started, me and Enzo, and we had no idea what we were doing. And we, made a lot of mistakes and I think we punched a little bit above our weight. I think we finished like 14th or something, somewhere in there, like the 12 to 14 range with that team. But we really had no idea what we're doing in the game, idea how to look at draft. Like we were just like, if I go back in time, I'd yell at the players for listening to us, right?
So Ping wasn't the problem on that team.
Yeah, Ping. Yeah, we were probably the problem on that team, to be honest. But it's part of the process, right? So then Dare Gaming, a lot of fun. We had a last minute roster change, and we brought in BMFX and Blossom, and they just hard carried us to top 12. They're super good. Censored Mercy was really good on that team. Enigma was really good on the team, Limo. So we had a really young, hungry roster that came together last minute. Then I did a brief stint on Wildcard in their development program. That's where I got to know players like Onat and Urison. and Dot. I don't know if people remember Dot. Guys like that. And we kind of, and while Enzo was running their second team, right? So we did the summer of that season. I think I was what, 22, 23, summer of 23. We took Onat and most of Wildcard Red at the time and made Here for T-shirt. And we worked really hard. We were ready to go, and we thought we'd be really cracked, right? Because we had good pieces of two, pretty solid teams, and we went 2-3 both times. Super painful, super frustrating. Lost to CLG Faith in both of our decider matches in Game 5, and just didn't have the results we wanted. So right after that is when I got the OC job, and I'm basically a graduate assistant, so I'm the assistant director. I help run the whole program as a whole, and then I also coach the league team, right? So I started with a pretty fresh group of guys, moved some people in, coached up some of the guys we have here now, right? I think my AD, who I've had the longest at Josu, was like low masters, like 40, 50, 100 LP, somewhere in there, and now he's a challenger peak player, right? Like he's really cracked on a lot of champions that he didn't know. So it's been like, and then the Team Fish Taco stuff, last spring and summer. We'll get more into that if you want, but it was a good time. I really liked my time at Team Fish Taco. They really believed in us and believed in what me and Colin were doing. Colin was my GM at TFT. So it was a good experience, right? I've coached a bunch of different players. I've coached a bunch of different teams, different play styles, personalities, right? Really young guys who aren't that experienced, like a Josu, and then really veteran people like Alorum and Dardock, who, really know what they want out of a coach and understand the game at a high level and will tell you when you're messing something up, right? So I've kind of had that whole arc where I've seen a little bit of everything, and it's been a good experience. I like doing it. That's why I keep doing it. So.
Yeah, I remember talking with you a little bit back in the Wildcard Dev days. I still have the Twitter DM somewhere of you saying Onat, Dot, and Snow 2 are all players to keep eyes
Snow
on.
too.
And
yeah, I forgot.
Yeah, no, definitely. Definitely had first look at some really great players there. So cool to hear about that whole journey. And yeah, we'll definitely get more into Team Fish Taco as we go along.
Cool. Yeah, but mostly right now I'm focused on the collegiate side, right? We did OQ1 and obviously didn't go very well, but we still have, 3 leagues, NACE, NECC, and CLL ahead of us. And the guys are working really hard. We're scrimming basically 5 days a week and all improving, getting the ranks up there and hoping we can make a late season push.
Fair enough. Yeah. And I guess since you're kind of busy with CLOL and then you're trying to get into OQ1s, like, do you still keep up with the NACL scene a lot? Like, do you talk with a lot of those players?
Yeah, I try to keep my ear to the ground. I joked with some players this offseason that I was the secret 11th team because I knew most of the rosters that were coming in and what was being done. And I did have some talks with a few teams really briefly, but decided it was just in my collegiate guys' best interest to not pursue NACL this season. My guys are really dedicated and really wanted to work hard. So it's like last season I could get away with splitting time. We were more for fun, more relaxed. But with some of the new guys I brought in, they really want to, see results. So it's not really fair to them if I split time, right? So, but yeah, I keep my ear to the ground, how things are going. I've talked with a few teams, try to understand where the meta's going and what teams are thinking, especially with Fearless, right? My only real regret is we didn't have Fearless in summer because it seems really fun, right? Like it seems like by game 3, and I'm super jazzed on playoffs, by game 5, you're going to see some wacky tobacco, right? It's going to be a lot of people getting deep into their pools.
Yeah, 100% for sure. And hey, maybe it'll trickle down, right? Who knows what things may bring, what the future may bring. I think one of the taglines
it's going to trickle up eventually, if you ask me. I think we'll get Fearless pretty much everywhere eventually. I
want Fearless Worlds. Give it to me.
Oh, yeah, that'd be so fun.
I think it'll get there. I really do.
Man, I missed the LCK days where if they went to game 5, they'd blind pick. That was super fun.
Two Shens. Yeah.
I mean, that's how we got the
meme
Faker Ryu play, right?
Yep.
Like, you can't get that nowadays because we don't have that format. I'm so sad. But yeah, you know what? We'll see. I do hope Fearless takes off as well, and we get to see it all over the place. But let's kind of get into the meat of things, Sneezes, because we brought you on. We are an NACL podcast. Let's talk NACL. This, I'm going to be honest, Kate, my first impression of this last weekend, it was kind of one-sided. Most of the games, quick 2-0s, and it didn't even look close. So yeah, Sneezes, let's get into the meat of it, because we are, after all, an ACL podcast, and that's what we're here for. So I'll start my thoughts on this last weekend. It wasn't the most interesting weekend for me. It felt like a lot of one-sided matchups, a lot of 2-0s, but we did get our best series of the regular season and what might potentially be our grand finals. The undefeated Maryville and FlyQuest challengers went at it, and I think that was, to me at least, the standout series. The macro in that game was actually beautiful to watch.
I agree. It was a really fun series. It got more sloppy as it went on because you could tell these teams really didn't want to lose.
Yeah.
And I love the counter-punch of when two good teams fight each other and face each other and think, like, I'm not losing to these guys. Like, come on, let's fight. So I think Coach Rocco said after the series that he wasn't super thrilled with some of the macro, but I kind of get it from a coach's perspective. You want to play really clean, like, objective focused games, but sometimes you just got to punch the other team in the face, right? So I thought it was a good showing from our top teams that, these are probably the two teams that have the most LCS ready players on them. And I thought it really highlighted, the skill that's being developed down in the NACL.
Yeah. And even when it did start getting a little bit sloppy, I do appreciate that. Like, it felt like every game started a bit clean, and this is more like within the game, it started getting sloppier and sloppier. And even then, they never lost track of the objectives or the macro that they needed to do. It felt more like they were opting to try and cut each other's macro plans, and that's why it felt like they were like, it's not the best way to play the game, let's be honest, but it still shows that they're macro aware and that they are just wanting to really throw hands at each other. And hey, honestly, it's the best time to do it in regular season because it doesn't affect things too much. You'll still be seeded 1, 2, maybe 3, depending on how Supernova plays. But yeah, you do this in the grand finals, it's really fun to watch, but then your stakes are so much higher.
Yeah, I think teams will get more conservative the closer you get to finals, but it's good to throw haymakers this time of year, establish a little mental dominance, right? These teams probably scrim each other too and know each other pretty well. One like play that I want to point out was Niles on the Rumble. I thought did a great job of getting his wave in and then using his shift timers effectively, right? He applied a lot of pressure into mid lane from top side, and that's something that uniquely Rumble can do, and that you kind of need to do on that champion to be as effective as possible, right? He's kind of like, and I've had some players say like he's AP Redectin. You just like burn your bar overheat and just all in with Ignite. But I think the best use of Rumble is creating a shift timer, getting into fog, and either making the mid laner sweat or killing them.
Yeah, 100%. Like every time he shifted to fog, you could see that, like Shaden Quad kind of had to like pay respects to the fact that, hey, we don't know where Niles is, and the fact that Sturdy couldn't lock him in lane, I think was massive too. Yeah,
and that's something that's really stood out to me about Niles like all season long. I feel like he has like a more so than most other top laners in the league, almost any other top laner in the league. I feel like he has a really good sense of like what his role is based on individual comps and based on individual champions that he's playing. Like he's great at buying space on stuff like the Cassante and the kind of tank picks. He's great at abusing those kind of timers when he's got push. And, there's even really stands out to me. I think it was the match against DSG. He plays Gnar in a game, and Young is fed on LeBlanc. This is a couple weeks ago, and he does just such a good job of like knowing like, hey, I've got the one-on-one damage and durability to just mark LeBlanc and keep her out of these fights. And it stood out to me how well he was able to do that as well. He's played from all sorts of different positions so effectively.
Yeah.
The other big thing about this Maryville FlyQuest series is I feel like it just, in the context of the weekend, it just emphasized that these teams are like, at least to me, feel like substantially ahead of everybody else. Like, sorry to Supernova for who are hosting us here, but I do think they're kind of a more distant third. And I think like the context of this week feels like it really shows it, where like Maryville and FlyQuest have this close banger series with each other, and then they roll back up the next day and they both just absolutely slam the teams that are up against them, both FlyQuest against AoE and Maryville up against Lit.
And with that, Gordo reveals why this is the last episode. We've spoken too much bad things about
Supernova. Okay, we weren't sure it was the last one. Now we're pretty sure. I do think that MU and Fly are definitely the top two teams. I don't want to say distant third, right? I think when it comes down to playoffs, you have longer series, you have bigger series. You have your meta read is going to change. We're already seeing the meta shifting, right? Like early season was very Callista focused, very poke Varus
Lucian.
focused in the bot lane, where lane dominance is really critical, right? But we're moving more towards scaling. We're seeing more scaling options. So I think Supernova needs the meta to go their way a little bit, and maybe MU or Fly falter a bit on a meta shift, which has definitely happened in pro leagues in the past. But yeah, they're definitely our top two teams. I think my order is, Fly, Maryville, Supernova, and that was, I think Maryville's been a really pleasant surprise. I want to shout them out, like, not just Niles, but Scary Jerry and Zyko have leveled up a ton from summer, right? I think they're one of the better bot lanes in the NACL right now, and just really showing it, game over game. And I don't want to bring up bad memories, but that was not the case in summer, right? So I think keeping a team, and that's the benefit of a team like Maryville, right? They keep people together, they build a culture, they have their practice down, they have their VOD review down, their systems down, right? They've been together for a long time. They don't have to restart like almost every other team in the league is doing. And so to me, it's a benefit of their longevity that they're sticking by these players and letting them grow and growing with their players.
Yeah, huge advantage for collegiate teams. And if you look a little bit at the OQs as well, Winthrop has been making splashes there. Perhaps that collegiate advantage. I'm actually really curious to see like how that would stack up against sort of the raw talent that we often see picked up by academy or NACL teams. And that's why I really like this whole relegation promotion system. The fact that we get to see collegiate kind of invade a little bit into tier 2.
They're benefiting from that continuity as well. I mean, this is the same roster that they were competing in the promotion tournament with last split, and now I think they look like substantially better over on Winthrop. Yeah, they're doing really, really well. So definitely excited. And great point, by the way, on the Scary Jerry, like looking more like Converse form. I think that Ezreal game in game number 1, like that really stands out to me as like classic. Classic is it like all the way back to Converse, Rock's 908 plus Scary Jerry bot lane era Scary Jerry. Yeah, he's just so aggressive on that Ezreal. His like he really is willing to like shift in and take fights and like buy space for the team in a way that I feel like a lot of players are saving that shift to disengage or to protect themselves from something unexpected. Whereas Scary Jerry just has that confidence to like go for the aggressive plays.
Yeah, and it's funny because we're hyping up Maryville so much, but let's not forget Maryville didn't win that series.
True.
It was FlyQuest Challengers after all. Yuji and Spyrex's former team as well, by the way, that did take the win on that. And I kind of talk about Quad a little bit because I remember at the beginning of the split, we had 2 Korean mid laners who imported, and everybody's like, "Oh, Quad and Romer are going to be absolutely nuts." And then, Quad, Quad former LCK experience and everything, it's definitely showing. But at the same time, I almost feel like he's less scary than he was. Like his laning doesn't feel quite as oppressive as it did at the beginning of the split.
I think I agree with
Maybe.
that. I think Quad looked like he's still going up like 20, 30 CS in every lane. I think if I'm not wrong, he solo kills Spyrax once or twice in this series. He looks absolutely insane up against the AoE later in the week as well. He's like, Onad just cannot breathe in those lane matchups. I don't know. I've still been very impressed with Quad. I think he's the best mid laner in the league.
Yeah, I think he's the best mid laner too. And for me, it's like it's hard to say like, oh, he was better in the start of the season. Maybe his competition is leveled up from scrims and seeing him and watching tape on him. But he was the best mid laner in week 1, and I think he's still the best mid laner. So it's hard for me to say like, oh, people are catching up, right? Like FlyQuest, they've built a great roster. I think they have probably the 2 best solo laners. They've done a great job integrating the import and the rookie in Sajid as well. And I think it's just they're kind of boring to talk about because they're just so dominant. And so it's a little more fun for me, at least, to see a team like Maryville, who definitely wasn't a top 3 team in summer, come up. But yeah, I don't want to take anything away from FlyQuest. They won the series. They're the best team in NACL. I think you could argue they have 3 of the best 5 players in NACL. Like they're nuts. I would not be surprised if they have several LCS promotions after this split.
Yeah, 100%.
They have 3 LCS players and an LCK player. They should be
true.
considered. Like they're where they should be. And I think if they weren't like going crazy undefeated, it would be a little disappointing. So I mean, I feel like expectations were sky high, but they've met them. So it's like, yeah, I think you're right. Sneezes it is a little boring, but it's in the good way. In the good way. And the fact that whoever ends up not feeling good after this first split definitely has some good candidates to pick on up if they want them.
Well, that's kind of why I mentioned Quad a little bit, because I do feel like the person who got contested the most was in a way Quad. Spyrex actually was up CS in 2 out of 3 games. The 2 games that Maryville lost, and the game they won, Spyrex was up a small amount of CS, but more importantly had a ton of map pressure and a lot more team fight presence. So that's kind of why I was bringing that up, because I actually thought that this was the one time this split, I think, the one series this split where I haven't felt like Quad actually definitively won that matchup.
Up in CS at 15 or like up in CS at game end?
I think they were pretty even at 15. I can't quite recall off the top of my head for the exact match details. But to be fair, Sparks was playing Twisted Fate into Lee as well, so he was catching a lot of side waves. So he was definitely
Mm,
up towards the end there.
okay.
I think he was still coming out of lane pretty even, because the final score, let me see, game two, um, on Talia, he was 351 CS to quads 285. And in game three, he was 290 CS to quads 235. Again, he was on 2 global champs, so he was
Mhm.
catching more sideways. But yeah.
Fair enough.
Okay. Well, we talked about the top 2 teams. They are definitively the top 2 teams, but there has been a name that's been creeping up there along with those 2 teams, and of course, it's got to be Supernova, who've been working alongside here. And there's been some questions: is Supernova that sort of clear top 3 with FlyQuest and Maryville? They did take Maryville to 3 games, and they'll be facing FlyQuest later on in the split. Whereas, there's some people who say no, they're not actually up there. They're actually part of the soup. They might be the top part of the soup, but they're still in that middle of the pack. Thoughts?
I think they're up there. To me, what distinguishes them is that they're clearly better than the soup. I think they've been more consistent. They pound for pound, like player wise, compared to Cincy Fear, Wildcard Team Liquid, they've just been a little cleaner.
Hmm.
And for me, the Supernova spot in the playoffs makes the bracket really interesting because FlyQuest is is the FlyQuest Supernova side of the bracket, right? The 1-3, I think is how it's going to break. Is makes it. Oh wait, is it 2-3 Maryville Supernova? I'm not remembering the playoff bracket off the top of my head very well, but FlyQuest, Supernova, Maryville, 2 of those teams have to be on the same side of the bracket. That's the Supernova side of the bracket if they're third, right? So whichever side of the bracket that is, it's very, very difficult for anyone below them. So I don't think you're happy if you're the 5th seed or the 6th seed playing Supernova, and you would be if some of those other teams were in there, right? If you could, I think the logjam between like 4 to 6, 4 to 7 is pretty, on the day and how draft goes and how the meta is going. And some teams are getting more favorable in the meta, some teams are getting less favorable. We're seeing bot lanes go to more scaling, which might help somebody like AoE or Wildcard. Or I mean, even TLC like spawns an amazing late game carry, right? So I think I don't think there's any like organic change that'll happen between now and playoffs that will make Supernova be the weaker piece. So I think third is the right spot for them.
Okay.
I definitely think they're better than the soup. I don't think it's fair to
Hmm.
say that they're part of the soup. The soup tops out at Cincinnati Fear to me. I think Supernova is like distinctly above it, but I don't think that that means they're up there with like Fly Challengers and Maryville either. Like I think FlyQuest, like if I were to tier list it out, I would say FlyQuest Challengers and Maryville S tier, Supernova A tier, and then nobody else in A tier. Like and then you're in like B tier by the time you're talking about like Cincy Fear.
Yeah.
And then you might not even like then maybe you're going to C tier. Like maybe Cincy Fear is alone in B tier as well. Like there's definitely a like I think Supernova is substantially ahead of the soup, as we're calling it now, I guess. But I don't think that means they're equal with the top 2.
That's
But I
fair.
guess we'll see. I mean, FlyQuest hasn't played them yet.
Yeah.
FlyQuest plays them the last week, so that'll be an interesting matchup for sure.
Yeah, especially if Supernova is as strong, as we think they are. I will say I used to think they were top 3, and especially after their match against Maryville, I felt like if not for a couple of things back in week 1, things could have gone Supernova's way. With the shift towards like Smolder and Jinx coming back in, it does feel like it's more of a raised meta as that sort of huge Giga team fight monster that he is. But honestly, after watching that series between FlyQuest Challengers and Maryville, their macro felt like it was on a different level. And so, as much as I like Supernova, uh, SUPERNOVA has not shown me that level of macro yet. They're incredibly dominant, and it almost feels like teams aren't pushing these top 3 teams enough to really reveal like their best cards just yet. And that's why to me, the FlyQuest Challengers Maryville matchup was such an amazing series to watch because those two felt like a different level when they played each other.
I think some of that has to do with the format. We're single elim or single round robin, excuse me. And I think when you only play a team once and you feel that they're near or at your level, you're going to err on the side of conservatism, right? It's really hard to just full send it in a game 3 or a game 2 if you're down 0-1 to just like do something crazy, do something freaky, right? Like when I was on TFT last split, we played TLC and FlyQuest challengers in the first round robin, and we just pulled out like the most cooked drafts we could to try to take a win off, right? Because it's BO2. So we're just like, okay, guys, we're down 0-1. Let's just, we thought we could have won game 1. Let's just, go with this, Kindred Gragas angle, right? And we did really well against TLC. So knowing that you play them again and that they can prep for that, you're kind of discouraged from really cooking in draft. And I think I'm hoping that more teams, get less conservative with that as we get into playoffs, right? Because avoiding losses in the regular season is fine, but you can't avoid losses in playoffs. You have to play to win.
Yeah, and you've got the losers bracket to play through as well. So I guess even more so, like when you're, especially if you're lower seeded teams in that first round of the playoffs, definitely like just pull out something wild, or you're probably not going to win playing standard anyways. Definitely agree with you there.
Sure.
Okay. Well, we talked about top 3. We should probably define the soup, and I think it's easier to define the soup as not top, not bottom. So let's go down to the bottom because we have some teams who are fighting to stay out of relegation, and that's the scary part. So at the bottom right now, Disguise and Mirage Alliance only have 1 win apiece, which makes these last 2 weeks critical. I believe actually if they lose their games in week 7, they might pretty much be all but eliminated at that point because of the way the tiebreakers work now. Yeah.
Yeah. So just really quick on the tiebreakers, the way that it works is it's first is series win percentage, right? So how'd you do in your series? Then your overall game win percentage. Now that is not the same necessarily as game wins. It makes 1-2s more valuable than 2-0s, but it's not as simple as just counting game wins. There are some like funky scenarios where you could end up with less wins than someone, but a higher percentage because of like more 2-0s and 1-2s. It's a little freaky, but then if you have a 3-way tie or still you have a logjam, it's the combined wins versus the other tied teams. So that's closer to a head-to-head. For an actual 1v1 tie, that will be your head-to-head record. But in a 3-way tie, it's like who won between these 3 teams, combined wins. So a little more nuanced, right? And then if for some reason we're still tied, if we have like a super soup where everyone's taken the exact same number of games off each other, we all have the same record, and we're all same win percentage, then there will be a BO1 to break the final tie with the head-to-head winner of the matchup having side select. So I don't think that's very likely. I think the way that the tiebreaks are calculated is kind of designed to avoid. It's like super hard to have the same win percentage, right? Like unless they have the literal same record, and then so I don't necessarily think it'll happen. But if you're an Agent of Chaos, if you want to see an extra NACL game, you should go pull out your foldy sheet and figure out who needs to beat what to make this tie happen, because I don't have it. I don't have it all to my head. I have no idea.
Okay, just on the surface, without looking at the exact like how many games you need to win and lose within the series, we've got some interesting ones coming up this week. We have Mirage Alliance and DSG facing off this week. We also have DSG Lit facing off this week. So week 7 feels like it really decides Disguise's fate here. I think Disguise, if they lose to Mirage Alliance, beat Lit, and then assuming they all sort of like win the other games and whatnot, they'll be all tied at 2 and 6. And AoE is at 2 and 4. So if they lose both their games, no, that doesn't work because they face Disguised. So they have to win. So AoE will stay out the 3-way tie. I think we can get a 3-way tie at the bottom. I don't know what the game scores need to be.
You'd also have to have the right game scores for the 3-way tie. That's where it trips up for me. I think you could see a world where those three teams have the same or similar record, but I doubt they're going to have the exact same, games because, Lit's been pretty competitive. They've done some interesting things in draft. The staff, they have a huge staff, but they've done a good job putting their players in a position to win. Disguised has really good players. I think if I had to rate the roster of the bottom three, I would put Disguised pound for pound as the best players, and they just need to figure it out a little bit. To me, they look a little disorganized, right? The joke term for them, I guess, would be DSG is disorganized gaming, but it seems like the players want different things in the game, and they're like, to me, they're one like team meeting away from figuring it out, right? Sometimes you just have to sit down and say like, hey, we're playing this style, we're playing a tank top, we're playing front to back, Jinx is our carry, like, Dare Gaming, let's go, right? So I'm not sure, they're going to adopt that exact style, obviously, right? But I think they're the team I would bet like figures it out, right? They have the resources, they have really good players, they have a pretty well built roster stylistically. They fit together, they know each other. I think they're the team that my guess would be the turnaround.
Okay, so just to clarify, you're saying then that you think the bottom two teams that went to relegation is Mirage Alliance and Lit?
I think so. Yeah,
I'm on that as well.
I have some friends on Mirage. Okay. I have some friends on Mirage. I really respect what Lit has done this season. I think it's tough when you're trying to bring in new players to the space, and it's like the incentive in the space is to go get veterans and go get people that will kind of guarantee your floor, and then try to coach them up and win. But I appreciate what they've tried to done this split. I just think it's really tough the position they're in mathematically, right? Yeah. And then playing each other, it's like most of these teams have played the hardest part of their schedule or have not played the hardest part of their schedule, where DSG has. So I think DSG would be my vote if I had to pick one to make it.
Okay. And Gordo, you said,
and I mean, a lot of them, they're in control of their destiny a little bit there because DSG does play against these teams, right? They still play against Mirage. So we'll see how that result ends up going out. I would predict DSG to be able to come out on top there, but
Mirage has been playing better though. I think if DSG figures it out, they'll win. And if Mirage keeps their form up, and we see like a week ago DSG, then Mirage will win, right? But if DSG figures it out, turns the corner, they'll win.
Yeah, I mean, I actually find that interesting. You're talking about how DSG just feel like they're one meeting away from making everything kind of work, because I'm looking at Mirage Alliance and I feel like they were the other sort of 3-game series last week up against TL Challengers, and I actually thought that they felt like they had kind of turned a corner a little bit. Will and RGS feel like they're actually working together now, that they're kind of connecting better, and Prismo had some of the best games he's had all split long as well. So I almost feel like Mirage is almost mathematically they're in a really tough mathematical position. I don't even know if they can actually make it out, even if DSG loses, because DSG would have to lose a certain amount of games as well, or like not pick up wins in their losses, I think, to make the math work. But I feel like Mirage could play huge spoiler this weekend because they play DSG. And frankly, I think the matchup for Mirage is good into DSG because I think for me, the biggest problem for DSG has been the mid jungle synergy. Perry and Young don't seem on the same page. And while Mirage Lands had that problem before, if they play like they did last week, then I think that jungle mid might be able to blow the game open.
Yeah, I think Mirage's jungle mid's been really good. When especially through Will, I think the problems they've had is RGS really wants to be a carry, or is playing a lot of these carry champions, right? The Syndra, the Orianna is kind of half and half, right? I call her like half an enchanter when I talk to my team about Orianna. But I think they've done really well. Yeah, the mage side for sure. But when they've played like Viego on Will, they've been really good. I want to see like a Graves or a Kindred from him. I don't know if those are necessarily where the meta's going, but I think giving Will the tools to carry is definitely the way they can do it. And I'll be honest, like Mirage, if you go look at their games, they've not played like awful League of Legends in all their games. Like I know the record looks really bad, but I swear they like lose in the most cursed ways possible. Like they will be ahead in the mid game, They'll be up towers. They'll be sieging a tier 3 and just get like inexplicably wiped, or get like pull the Baron at like a bad time. Like they're
Prismal getting caught. I feel like
a player gets caught
very frequently.
And I like the guys in Mirage. I've worked with a lot of them before, so I don't want to denigrate any players, but it seems like so rough when you have these recurring problems in the middle late game. And I know how like daunting it can be in a scrim environment when you're like kind of waiting for it to happen in your head. And if Mirage is gonna recover and get that 8th spot in the playoffs, they kind of have to find a way to tune out the noise and just do their thing and just like play to have fun, play to like be together, like not wait for the wheels to fall off, right? Because it's literally how some of their games have gone. They've been up like 2-3K gold against decent teams, up on AoE a bit, up on wildcard, I think, in some of that series, and it's just like the Prismal getting caught, Dardak getting caught on a weird timer, like it's just I feel bad. It's unfortunate. I think there's good players on that team.
100%.
I definitely agree with the like playing around, like the Will RJS early game duos. I think has been when they've looked the best. They played it once or twice in wins in NACL, and they also played it in the Hot Pockets Invitational one weekend when they were off of. I keep saying invitational. It was an open tournament. It was the exact opposite of an invitational. I don't know why that's like my default word when I'm talking about a tournament. But they played in the Hot Pockets tournament that Aegis hosted on their week off from NACL when they didn't have any matches scheduled. And both there and in NACL, I felt like the comps they looked best on were when they're playing like Brand Jace as their like jungle mid duo. I do want to see more of that out of. I think RJS is a really good Jace as well. I want to see more of like that kind of stuff coming out of these guys.
Yeah, for sure. And then the issue for them has not been like individual performances so much as just like you were kind of alluding to. It seems as the fact that mid late they just don't seem to connect, and then people get caught out, and it's just weird. In a way, they are playing a game of League of Legends, solo queue. That is now lit. So this is interesting to me because Gordo, you mentioned earlier that it feels like TSG's fate is in their own hands. I feel like that exemplifies Lit more than anyone else right now because Lit have one game that matter for relegations this weekend, and it's do they beat DSG? If they beat DSG, I think they're pretty much safe. Or they're in a fairly safe position. There is still a situation where DSG beats Mirage Alliance and beats who's the other one they're playing? AoE, and then maybe they can overtake Lit. But if Lit can win this, then things are looking real good for them.
I think Lit's guaranteed if they have to 2-0.
Yes.
And they take a game off their last series, which I want to say is like FlyQuest. Which feels
TLC.
Oh, TLC. Okay.
FlyQuest is the Mirage one. That we didn't even bother talking about because
And so I think both those series are kind of tough. And if DSG is riding the ship, then I think that team is pound for pound a little better. It's tough. I think Lit could have a good weekend and still find themselves 9th place, and that's rough.
That'd be painful. I think I had Lit as my black horse this tournament, and we've seen moments of brilliance from them, but it does really feel like this is a team that has to upset for the most part. Pound for pound, they haven't looked quite up to the task of matching some of these NACL teams in the individual roles, and even though their mid games have often been quite interesting and they have very, very good drafts as well, it often feels like they're not able to survive the laning phase quite as well. And I think that's where things are a bit rough for this team. So,
and they've mitigated that in some ways. I really like that they've allowed Messages to play, his funky stuff. I think he had a Tryndamere game. Was it? I know they played some Seraphine. So I think they're doing a good job putting those players in a spot to succeed. And it's just the way the league kind of levels up over the course of the season. Once you lose that, once you lose those laning phases and scrims and you're kind of still struggling, it just kind of, the momentum is tough to catch up, right? The teams get so much better. If you go back and look at week 1, like even Maryville and FlyQuest didn't look nearly as good as they do now.
Sure. Yeah. Well, actually, no. I think Maryville looked good from the start, and then they had a bit of like a slump.
Relative to the league, but just objective level of play, I think the best teams have leveled up a lot, and usually the teams that are struggling are about where they started. And that's also was my experience, right?
Mm-hmm. Okay, I was just looking up to see if there was a Tryndamere played. Not
I think he
this
played
split,
it
so
in promo tournament, maybe.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
maybe I'm
Last
misremembering.
split, yeah.
But he
No,
got to
that's
play
right.
he played the Smolder mid, which I feel like nobody
Oh
else is
yeah,
really
yeah, the Smolder
doing.
was good.
Yeah, he he got the Jace game, which isn't he's not the only guy who plays Jace, and then definitely they've been giving him the Seraphine whenever they can, which it feels like only really Messages does.
Yeah, for sure. And we know from talking to Messages last week as well, he has the dual burden of shot calling. So I feel like giving him something like a Seraphine where you can focus more on shot calling and map plays and stuff like that does benefit Lit as a whole in terms of how they play out the early and mid. Well, so we've kind of addressed that. Let's touch on AoE a little bit too, because AoE on paper, 2 and 4, should be part of the bottom 3, bottom 4, almost at risk of relegation. But they actually have more wins. They have 7 wins to 8 losses right now, and I think that's why we're considering them more as part of the soup. And only 1 win sets them apart from sort of Cincinnati Fear, TL Challenger, wildcard gaming. So let's talk about the soup a little bit. What are we expecting from them? Because it feels like very different trajectories for a lot of them. Like wildcard had the winning streak and then the losing streak, and now they broke it again with a win. So they kind of balanced. Team Liquid Challengers had a really rough start. It feels like they're starting to pop off a little bit more. And then Cincinnati Fear and AoE, like they're just kind of there. Like I don't have a best read on like what they're or how it stacked them up to teams because they feel a bit like high highs but low lows.
Yeah, I think with Fear specifically, they've done a good job integrating a player like Toasty, this is his first split in NACL, and it's really hard on a mid laner to come into NACL. You know, there's usually an import or two. There's a lot of experienced players. There are players, supports and jungles that are very good at attacking mid, and in a split where the map changed to make mid more vulnerable, so you can't hide under your tower as well. I think Toasty overall has played pretty well, but has had a couple of those, welcome to the NACL rookie kind of games where teams are really punishing him. I think we saw that last week as well. He got dove a lot, and they're sorting it out. But I think Fear's, going to be good. I think they can take somebody in playoffs. I'm not, sweating them too much. I know some of the staff over there. I know they work really hard. They're smart about the game, and they always cook and draft. And so the one thing I want to see Fear do more as we get closer to playoffs is start cooking. I want to see them fire up the walk and do something a little more interesting. I think they have the pieces with somebody like Chad who can play. We've seen 1 or 2 Rengar games, and we've seen a little Kha'Zix here and there, but he's kind of defaulted to those like default meta utility junglers, and I want to see him go like totally nuts and let him and Toasty, kind of do what Mirage are trying to do, where Toasty's a little more supportive and Chad is the carrier, right? So, and then do something wacky in the bot lane, right? I know they don't have the same bot lane as they did last split, but they were like so hard to draft prep for, right? They would play the Ziggs, the Seraphine, like pretty much anything. And so I want to see them get back to cooking and get back to like making teams sweat the prep, especially when we go into BO5, right? Yeah. Fearless BO5, I would not want to prep for Cincy Fear. Like, no, thank you.
Yeah. Some things I really agree with there. I mean, you've got Daption, right? Like the Heimer guy, right? I think he's 100% win rate on Heimer.
Oh, yeah, more Heimer too.
Yeah, so Heimer support cooking there. Chad, like, yeah, I'm down to see more level 1 coin flips on that Rengar. I mean, it worked out in Chad's favor. That was game 3 against who was that? Disguised, right? Against Perry, very
Disguised, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, Perry.
But that said, you want to cook more? Let's talk about their game this weekend because I felt they overcooked their game 2 draft. They had Philip with the Renekton top and Toasty in the Cassante mid. I don't know. I didn't like that draft coming against Wildcard there.
I like what they were going for. I think it's the regular season is a good spot to do something a little different, and I like Toasty is a pretty good melee mid laner. A lot of mids struggle playing both mages and melees, right? Toasty can play the Sylas, Toasty can play the Cassante, and he's good at doing the things that champion does: take up space, be annoying in team fights, eat somebody over a wall. I know he didn't have the best showing on it, but if I'm Fear, I just need a little more DPS chips somewhere on my comp, and I'm going back to that in the playoffs, right? One, it shows you're confident in a young player to bounce back from a rough game or two. And two, it does give them more flexibility, especially in Fearless. The only argument I'd say against it is if you draft Cassante, you only get to pick it once because of Fearless. And maybe it's just that OP as a top laner that you just give it your top laner and just play standard. But I like the angle. I thought it was creative, and I want to see more. I want to see more from Fear. I don't think if you're Fear you can cook hard enough. I think the more scrappy and annoying you are with your draft to the other team, the more they have no clue what you're doing, the better off you are. That's my feeling when it comes to Fear.
Okay. Wise words from the former chef of Team Fish Taco there. Gordo,
yeah, well, we burnt it a little bit, so.
This guy who burnt his tongue on the cook harder. Okay, this could go one or two ways, I guess. Gordo, any thoughts on sort of the Cincinnati Fear or any of the teams in the Super really?
In particular, I agree. It's like really hard to kind of get a read on where Cincinnati Fear is. I do definitely like. I think it's worth noting that they've like even in every series they've won, they've dropped a game. Um, like it definitely speaks to a little bit of the inconsistency there. Although the fact that they're so creative in draft and are willing to be that way makes them, I think, very favored in game 3 scenarios. So it's there's kind of two sides to that coin. I mean, wild card really shocked me here. I was really calling that wild card we're not going to win any more series. I thought they're kind of out of gas in the tank, and then they come in with that big 2-0 over Cincinnati Fear. I think Quacker showing a little bit more in the top lane. Gets his Olaf, wins the Olaf game. They were sniffing the Nexus in that game for Cincinnati Fear. Like, I don't know if it was necessarily the cleanest game out of wild card, but they come up with the win one way or the other. And then they have a really solid performance in game number 2. Perhaps you base that on since these Fears not having quite enough DPS chips, as Sneeze this year put it.
I think wildcard is on the way up, and one thing I want to highlight is Quacker. This was a guy last summer known for playing just a few champions very well, but it seems like he's really embraced the wacky tobacco meta we have with like TF being played in every role. And so I was really surprised and happy to see him take the TF and say, "Hey, give me the flex. It's totally unplayable," and have him kind of move away from that perception of him where it's like, oh, this is a Renekton and Olaf Adarius player, right? So I think Quacker's done a really nice job. I also think for the bot lane, Aaron and Doxa as a role swap has performed well above expectations. I think it's very tough to swap, and Doxa is like the every role player at this point. He's played mid, he's played top, he's played support. Maybe he'll jungle in the playoffs. I'm just kidding. But I think he's played really well, and also the meta is moving towards Aaron. I think Aaron is a good late game carry. He's a good team fighter. He knows how to space in fighting. Not the best laner as far as NACL is concerned, right? I'm not saying he's bad in lane. It's just the competition is increasing. But if the meta moves to mid-late game 2.5, 3 items, I think that's more of Aaron's sweet spot. And so I could see wildcard, having a better draw as we get closer to playoffs. I think some teams are going to benefit from certain champions coming back. AoE, Wukong. I think Tim is a good Wukong player. Rosethorn, and so, but overall with the meta with the bot lane, I think it's very favorable for wildcard.
Yeah. And I just want to kind of go into that a little bit too, because I think the expectation coming into the split a lot when people saw the Aaron Doxa bot lane was they were going to get slammed in lane, right? Aaron coming in from CLOL, and not exactly coming in with like Shogo or Scary Jerry levels of hype originally, and Doxa having a role swap. Nobody doubts Doxa's got good mechanics. I mean, the man as a mid laner was insane and often a very clutch player in mid to late games, but the laning as a support, you don't have the gold that you normally have or the experience that you normally get in solo lane. But I think they're laning, whilst it hasn't been the strongest in the league, I think they've been surviving really, really well. And Aaron is one of the earliest first bloods, right, in the league. I know it's not like a solo 1v1 or like 2v2 first blood, but still, like I think Aaron and Doxa have that the kill sense they need to survive in NACL on the bot lane. So yeah, definitely one of the biggest surprises for me. And TLC, let's touch on them a little bit, because remember how I was talking about how I felt like Quad isn't as scary as he used to be, whether that be other mid laners kind of stepping up. I feel like Romer's the opposite. I feel like Romer came in and had a rough first couple of games. Maybe it was communication issues. I mean, he's coming in. I don't know. I know we've joked in the past on the podcast about Korean junglers acting as a translator, Kyo not speaking Korean. But I think Romer more recently has actually looked really good in the mid lane, better, and he looks like he's been improving really quickly.
Yeah, I think he's acclimated. I don't know what's the root cause there where they seem to struggle in the beginning. I think they did have some unfortunate mid to late game stuff. I think in week 2 they went for an end and then got wiped and then lost, right? So that happens in NACL. It's a development league, right? No one's expected to have perfect play and perfect macro, especially in those really late game situations. You're racing a death timer. But I think TL's has good players. They have really experienced players like Keel and Spawn. Yeah, yep. But I also think this is another bot lane where the meta is kind of going their direction. Spawn was probably the best of Phelios in NACL in the summer, and he was on the 10th place team, and I still think he was the third best ADC in NACL, even though we had several players that got promoted. So I think this is a team that, if they get into mid late and if they have their mid jungle sorted out, is definitely has like the punching power to hang with some of these top teams. If I was going to call like a top 3 upset right now, I think TLC would be the team to do one of the upsets in playoffs and knock one of these big 3 into the lower bracket. I don't think it will happen necessarily. I think the gap is still there, but if I had to pick one, I'd pick TLC.
Okay, Gordo, you want as high as sneezes on TLC here?
I mean, I could see it happen. I like the players. I'm not super high on how they've been performing together lately. I mean, that you mentioned it earlier. We had some conversation about their mid jungle being all over the place. If they can get that together, I mean, I think they'll end up being a better team. But they're outside of relegation territory, which means everybody can stop panicking. Well, if I think Team Liquid Challengers has always been a team that is kind of going to kind of aim for the fences a little bit, and sometimes they've been more successful than other seasons. Like there were even splits with Spawn where they weren't able to they didn't end up making super deep runs, or they bombed out of playoffs super early and stuff like that. And I mean, if that happens, it happens.
Sure.
That's fair. Yeah, I think for me, TLC, I still feel like they're part of the soup in a way. Like their individual players are really strong, but somehow it feels like they lack that flavor, that sort of sense of identity I get from teams, like Wildcard, like Cincinnati Fear. Like to me, Wildcard Gaming is like the winning team, right? Like yeah, Quacker's doing really well, Aaron Dox is doing really well, but any team when he's on, he leads, and so there's always that sense of aggression that comes through from Wildcard Gaming. Since if you're like you mentioned, that sort of like willing to cook attitude coming through from them, AOE, with Zamudo, especially in the top side, Wixie Breezy, that's in a strong laning team. TL Challengers feels like an all rounder to me, and while that's not a bad thing by any means, sometimes I also feel like that's what hinders them a little bit, and that they don't necessarily have the clearest identity and idea of like how they want to win. If that makes sense. Yeah.
For
Yeah,
sure.
I agree. They've got the potential. If they pick a direction and roll with it, I could definitely see them popping off. I Yeah, I kind of with you on this one. Is I don't see them cracking top 3. If there was a team to do it, maybe. Actually, no, I would disagree with you there. I think if there's a team to crack top 3, I think wildcard upsets. But
you think wildcard? Nice. I like it. I'm down. I think TLC. I think the odds favor TLC. Just Romer improving every week.
Yeah.
And the meta moving towards Spawn. But I don't hate the wildcard answer. Right. Darkwing's really good. Winnie's really good. Aaron Dox have been playing great. Quacker's killing it. I think it'll be 05. Like BO5 Fearless. It's gonna be sweaty. I'm really hoping we see some 5th games in the playoffs. Like I don't want any 3-0s, 3-1s. Like I want to see 3-2 for every game in the playoffs. I want to see these. I want to see Thresh. I want to see Malphite. I want to see like the stuff that we haven't seen all year, because there's no champions left, right? And I think that's when we'll see what a team is really made of.
100%. I'm sick of seeing the same 35 champions over and over again. Like give me
Give
something
me a
new.
Nivea. Like, give me something funky.
Yeah, like a Nivea
Someone
pop.
play Galio Kindred in Game 5. Like, come on.
Okay.
Sure.
Any thoughts on the standings, or shall we move on?
I think. By the way, I know we kind of touched on AOE as like the lower end of the soup, but I think just by the nature of their competitiveness, they've been like a 2-1, 1-2 team for a lot of the season. I don't think they're in real danger of relegating. I see them as like taking games off people and dropping games when maybe they shouldn't. But to me, they have to have a lot of 0-2s, basically lose out to be in risk of relegation. So, while they might still be in the soup, I think they're safe.
Yeah, and with their strength of schedule, there's no way. Like even if they lose all 3 matches, there's no way they're winning series. They're not winning. Even if they lose all the matches, there's no way they're
Right.
not
They're
winning
not losing all
games.
the
And they
games.
already
Yeah.
Yeah.
they already have such an advantage in games, right? Like they're at 7 wins already. That's 2 more than Lit. That's 4 more than Disguised. Yeah, and their last opponents they play DSG, they play Wild Card, and they play Fear, who we just talked about have never 2-0'd anybody. So I don't think there's just no way they're not picking up more game wins. They'll scrape in the playoffs one way or the other.
I mean, you could say that fate's in their own hands. Just win one game and you're safe, pretty much, right? Or one
They
or
might
two
not
games.
even need to do that. I mean,
Yeah.
True.
True.
Well,
Like 7
win
like
1 or 2 and you secure it.
yeah,
Anything
like
else-
Yeah.
our 2 of Lit and Mirage, like Lit and Mirage would both have to win 2 more games. Disguised would have to win 4 more games or 2 more series. It's just not like it's really tough. Like a lot of teams that have not given you a lot of reasons to trust them have got to have big over performances for AoE to get into dangerous territory.
And I think you could spin a narrative on teams easing up once their playoffs are locked, but I'll say from experience that does not happen. Right. When I was on TFT last week of the regular season, we played TLC, Fly, and Maryville, and TLC and Fly were already locked playoffs, and we were fighting with Maryville for that last spot. And we were thinking like, okay, we'll plan some really good drafts, we'll prep some certain things, and like do something a little differently. Like we already took a game off Fly early in the season, we took a game off TLC. Like we can 2-0 these guys, or we can 1-1 and we'll be okay. And they just slaughtered us. Like they were not messing around. It wasn't oh guys, this is fake because it's still the regular season, blah blah blah. No, they want to play first. They want to finish first in the regular season. They're not playing for like, oh, how is our playoff position? Most of the players in this league, especially from the top of NACL, they're playing for LCS audition, right? So they don't want to put any bad games on tape. They don't want to look bad in their LCS org, right? They're going to play to win, and I don't see any of the top teams just taking their foot off the gas and letting one of these bottom teams, steal a series.
Yeah. Anything the stakes are just as high still, even if they qualify, right? Because I like the way you put it. It's an addition. So, like it's not over till it's over. Even if you secure the playoff spots, if you have a bad performance, it looks bad, and hey, people don't want to pick you up at that point. If this was like LCS level, yeah, I could see teams like slacking off a little bit, maybe want to hide some of their cards a little bit more. But at the NACL level, if the only way up is by audition, by being invited, then yeah, you got to put on the best performance at all times.
Exactly.
I actually do think that the relegation is great if you're trying to improve the league. But to me, it's how you want to spin it. If Disguise or TL gets knocked out of the NACL, gets relegated out of there somehow, obviously that's not the case or it's unlikely for TL right now. But if Disguise were to do that, then I think it does call into question that, hey, this isn't just a content league anymore, right? Like these teams have to be good. And if anything, I think a much better media angle would be for Disguise to come back in and say, okay, we will make it back in next split. You do the comeback arc. And that's great. And, whichever team comes up as well, you've got that sort of brand value of saying, hey, I beat DSG. I beat the team that just won last split, relegated, and we took them on. There is a talent pipeline here. So I think a lot of it's just kind of how you spin it. And sure, there's going to be doomsayers, there's going to be naysayers. But at the end of the day, it's what you want, right? Relegation gets you the best teams. Franchising gets you whatever the franchises want, whether that be good teams, whether that be more entertainment. It's up to them. And as viewers, we lack control when that happens.
Now, my challenge from the relegation perspective is that I think it goes a little bit against the principles of what the NACL is supposed to be. This is a development league. The goal of the league is to get players from tier 2 to tier 1. We want players like Surdy to have success in this league and then become LCS players. And frankly, as far as I'm concerned, Surdy already is an LCS player, right? Like he had an LCS job, and the situation with his team happened, right?
The company went under. He didn't get
not
fired.
his fault. Yeah, exactly, not his fault. But for me, it's tough to develop players and incentivize the development of new players when the personal cost and the org cost of relegating is so high. So I'll use Team Fish Taco as an example, right? We bring in a player like Onat, who I'd worked with in the past, has improved every split he's played, has consistently, played a ton of games, improved in competitive, improved in solo queue. He was like a GM player when I first started working with him, then was like a middle challenger player, and now he's consistently top 10, 20 in the ladder, right? So this guy is like going up and up and up. And we're the 10th place team, and we have a big, we put in a lot of effort. We're trying a lot to improve and grow, but our level isn't there yet as a team. And I was really concerned at the end of relegations when we relegated that like the failure of the team was going to have an outsized impact on the careers of the players. I was thankful that we were able to that the players were able to move on to other opportunities, right? Tim Rosethorn on AoE, Onat on AoE, and Spawn on TLC. It's unfortunate that our other players didn't have as robust a market or whatever. I'm not really sure about their specific situations, right? But when you're trying to develop new players, having that personal risk of, if I have a bad split by this league's standards, my career might be wrecked, I think is kind of unfair to newer players. And so I'm good with relegations. Like it's there, it's not going anywhere. I'm not like advocating it should go away, but I think players and orgs should keep into perspective the level of where a player's career is at and think about, okay, this player had a bad split, got relegated. Where are they in their arc? Can this player learn? Did they learn from their experience? Those kind of things, right? And I'm glad our players weren't judged too harshly for relegation. But it's tough. It's a really tough situation. In the moment, the players feel like their career's over, right? Like that's the vibe in the room. So for me, and there's no real upside, right? I think if you could relegate out of NACL and go into LCS, you would, and from a relegation tournament style thing, you would see a huge influx of investment in tier 2. Which I get the reasons why the franchise league is there, but if Wildcard could promote into LCS, that would be banger.
Yeah,
and I think it'd be really good for the space overall.
I think that
sorry to like go on a huge rant about it, but
this is the podcast is for.
Podcast, baby.
Relegations, right?
Yeah,
it's really tough to develop young players who are not there yet, but want to get there and are working to get there if they feel like their career's over after a bad split.
Yeah, and I think you kind of hit the nail on the head, at least for me, Sneezes. You put it into words. Basically, I think it's an incompatibility between the franchising at the top level and relegations at the second level. Like if you want to have relegations, it needs to be all the way through, right? And then you've got a pipeline. And then, like you said, like relegations at that point makes a bit more sense. Like if you're not good enough, that's fine. You're in tier 2, you fall back to tier 3 if you need be, but you can still get back up there if you get better. Whereas this sort of franchise sitting at the top does mean that if you're not in tier 2, you don't have their eyes on you. And then suddenly tier 2 becomes a lot more risky. Orgs as well, because, hey, the orgs can't promote, right? So the success of an org becomes defined
coaches, by roster decisions even, right? Like if I'm looking for a top laner on a roster and I can decide between a promising young player and a veteran who I know is going to consistently perform, it's in my interest to go with the safer choice, because the upside of winning is great, but the downside of relegation is a lot bigger, in my opinion, right? I would love to win NACL. I never, ever want to get relegated ever again, right? Like,
so the fear of failure
I would rather
outweighs
finish
the
8th place for 5 years and just retire and just be a bad NACL coach than ever get relegated ever again. I would rather turn off the option of winning, but no, I won't get relegated, than go through relegations again. Just my own opinion, right? I'm not saying relegate's a bad system, whatever, right? But just, it's really painful.
While that's fair, I do think there's an element of self-solution there. Like, it's a little bit self-regulating in the way
Yes.
that, like, if all 10 teams think like that, 2 teams still do get relegated.
Yep.
And,
Yep.
then the idea is I get the demoralization aspect is definitely a concern, and I definitely see that, like, perspective, but I do think the fact that you aren't reliant on that outside opinion to get back in if you're able to re-promote yourself is supposed to be the release valve on that, but it's definitely
Mhm.
not, it's not as simple and straightforward of a path as you might like.
Can I
I
give a
will
hot take?
say, oh, go
Can I
ahead,
give a
Sneasy,
hot
Oh.
take?
please.
I think if there was no relegation in NACL, a player like Toasty gets picked up way sooner than he did. That's my hot take.
Ooh.
Toasty's been pretty good for a long time and has improved really quickly over the time that I've known him. And so I think if there was if it was the league structure was safer, a team would have taken a flyer on Toasty sooner.
That's
So you're saying if it's
fair,
the
but I mean,
old
I think
academy system, they would have
the
taken Tuesday?
I would have paid money out of my own pocket to get Toasty into an LCS academy team. Like
yeah,
the
like
guy's
that.
potential is like.
I think in the modern era, I think it was starting to get better, and that's the tragedy, right? Is I think it was starting to get better. I think
Mhm. And
Golden
the wheels fell off.
Guardians, prior to the cuts and everything, Golden Guardians were making a more vested effort into using their academy system. I think Cloud9 had always been pretty good about it. 100
Mhm.
Thieves were starting to get much better about their level of effort. Evil Geniuses had been doing a really good job. Like, even Dignitas kind of was starting to, like, get it together at the end there, like
Mhm.
their last season in the league, they were the finalists. They had a really solid roster put together that included guys like nearly everybody from that roster is now either gone up to LCS and come back down or is currently in the LCS, right? Insanity, XU, Isles, or Isles wasn't on the team. Diamond came up and went back down, and Toma.
If the old system was financially viable, I think players like Toasty would have gotten picked up because teams would have seen the return on a player like Danny and JoJo from Evil Geniuses, looked at the model of how did they get them there, and then repeated that process. And a player like Toasty was the right age, the right intangibles, the right attitude, the right skill level to get swept up in that net. But I think the net didn't get there because of the financial viability, right? And
And
so
I want to believe that, but then I look at how, like, teams like Immortals have built their roster this year, and I'm just like, have we really learned anything? I don't know. Like, at
Yeah.
least not everybody seems to have.
Yeah,
Um,
and maybe
and
a lukewarm take from me.
no, yeah, please, lukewarm take first. Then I want to yell at LCS orgs.
Yeah, go for it. I'm not far off from yelling at them too, because I think a lot of what we saw happen in sort of last year in 2022 comes from the fact that Proving Grounds opened up a way to challenge the academy teams. Like we couldn't relegate them, but we could challenge them. And I think that
right.
exposed a lot of flaws in the existing academy system. If that doesn't happen, if there is no threat to the academy teams, if tier 2 is just kind of a closed ecosystem where the only way you get in is just by, like a scout finds you and brings you on. Yeah. I think Toasty gets locked out, or no, okay, I don't want to say that. He might get picked up, but I don't think he gets
The
seen the
path
way
is
he
not
does
as
now.
organic, right? The path isn't as organic.
Yeah, and I fear like for Toasty, like without that, before that, like you had to scout, say like, was it Unified, Risen, Focus back then? And I can tell you, a lot of the scouts weren't doing that. A lot of the scouts didn't even so much as look at there. So I think Toasty would have had a really, really tough time going up there. Now that said, towards the end, as you said, like last year, it was still a closed system. The interaction was in Proving Grounds. There was no relegation available, or not last year, pardon me, 2022, I guess. There was no relegation, so technically it was still under the franchise system. But even then, I still think from what we were seeing, it was better than it was before, but it was still really, really slow. And I think Gordo can probably take over and rant the LCS teams, because I'm kind of with him on the sort of
Yeah.
team roster.
Well,
there.
that's what I wish so badly that I could, like, buy into that. I would be 100% certain that Toasty would have gotten a shot, and I do think there's a decent chance he would have, on one of those like better academy first split of Proving Grounds where no team comes in with 5 fire and value and Anda on that team, and they beat every single academy team. And it's like objectively should have been like such a fucking embarrassment, right? Like,
well, they lost to one academy team,
sure,
but
and then
they beat everyone else on the way there.
yeah, well, and they still came in through the lower bracket and they won, right? Like they took first.
Didn't they lose to C9 Academy at the end?
I don't recall, to be honest.
No team won the first Proving Grounds. If I'm wrong with this, I'm
yeah, you're right. They lost to C9 and in the
upper bracket, but they came with
yeah, you're right. They won it all. Yeah. You're right.
Proving Grounds.
I got it flipped in my head.
Yeah. I can't find it, but
no, you're right. No team did win.
Yeah,
that was
no
like
team won.
The
Yeah, the team with 5 fire and value and Viper and I'm forgetting support. It was Winter. Was it Winter?
It was Big.
Big. Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, and Viper like that should have been such an embarrassment to these orgs, right? Like these teams with pennies for resources, coming in and beating your players who are all salaried, who are all nearly all living in house, who are all getting professional coaching, and it's like that should have been such a wake up call that hey, we're not doing this right. Clearly we could be doing so much better if these folks with no resources can beat us all. And it just didn't get really that much better. Like, I don't think it really was that big of a wake-up call. And then JoJo and Danny come next season, and it's like, well, that should be the wake-up call. And that's not really the wake-up call either. And,
Fear's first split. They were...
Yeah, and then, Fear does it, and it's not really that big of a wake-up call then either. And NRG wins Summer after rebuilding over 2 years, and... 100 Thieves gets the memo, I guess, but it's just not. There's never been that big moment where it just turns around and next season everybody's taking chances on the rookies.
Yeah.
And I think that was true at tier 2 level as well. And I wish it was different, but I just don't think it has been. And to tie that back, right? If I think the same thing should be true for Team Liquid right now. I think they're probably not going to be relegated, but had they lost that series to Mirage and still been in the conversations, Romer is a top 2 highest paid player in this league.
Yep.
We know this because he's one of only 2 that are on the GCD. So he's getting paid at least LCS minimum. And you have a coach taken straight from NRG's championship roster last year, and you have all of these additional resources, and you can get LCS scrims on demand, and maybe not every single time, right? I'm sure Team Liquid main is playing other teams and stuff as well, but you have an advantage in resources against all the other teams here, as well as in your ability to attract talent. And you still are not putting up the results. And if you can't leverage those advantages to not be bottom 2, maybe you don't belong here. And
I have
better off.
I have a small point of contention, though.
Yeah.
I do think I think it goes back to the point of the league, right? I think developing players versus winning are 2 different things. I talk about this with my collegiate players, right? Performance and learning are incompatible. You can't perform and learn at the same time. You have to be focused on learning or focused on performing. And so I will literally tell my guys, hey, this is a performance scrim. We're going to VOD, but it's not going to be our focus. We're going to do the stuff we've been working on. And I want us to show that we've learned it and that we've locked it in, right? Whether that is setting up objectives properly, shifting to Herald properly. I can get into it, right? But I think I don't want to assign a value judgment to an org like Team Liquid, who might have a different priority on what their NECL team is for than what the league seems like it should be for, right? The standings, the thing. I think Team Liquid getting relegated would definitely be bad for the scene. I don't think the players or the coaches or anybody wants to get relegated. I'm not, I would never say that. But I think if they're taking a shot on younger players and trying to develop a specific few players that is the focus of their roster, somebody like Keel, who hopefully has an LCS future in front of him, regardless of result of this particular split, I think it's still worth it for an org like Team Liquid. Because if you can go get your next jungler in 2 years, just from either a cost or an investment or a marketability standpoint, I think it's worth it. So I don't want to get too results based. I get your point. I think teams have griefed it in the past, but there's not enough like luxury resources in the space where I think teams are sleeping on it and griefing. I think some teams have different priorities. I think like I would say just looking at how the teams are constructed, FlyQuest, for example, has done a really good job integrating their rookies, integrating an import, and surrounding them with 3 really experienced players to make sure those 2 players are successful, right? They don't need to put effort into Surdy. He's already like a top 5 laner in North America, right?
Yeah, like you said, he's LCS ready,
right? Yeah. So I think teams are going to have different priorities. I don't know what team. I'm not going to profess to know what each team's priority is, but I think it's important to assess like, hey, maybe the purpose of this team is to get heal ready for LCS, and that means something different than how Fly is constructed, right? So just my perspective, being from a coach and seeing teams get built for different reasons, right? Like when we had Dardoch on TFT, the structure of our team was very different than it was in the summer, right? Because we had some very experienced players like Alorm and Dardoch and Winter that, frankly, I could be really harsh with. And I could say, this is what we need to do. This is the draft that we think is winning, and these are the angles. Where like somebody like NXI or Onad or Lunacia need more guidance, need more fundamentals, needed more, a little more rah-rah, right? And I wasn't very good at rah-rah. So maybe that's where some of those results came from, right? So that, sorry, I'm talking your ear off, but no, I think it's different for every team, and it's always going to be a little different for every team.
I like how you say like you aren't a rah-rah kind of guy, but you're being the nice one here who's like, oh no, we need to develop this talent. And then Gordo and I are just like, no, Scorpions in a jar, chuck them in. Best one comes out.
Well, I've been in the jar before, so I've been in one of the Scorpions, so I've gotten stung. So I'm a little more. I come from a place of empathy. I try not to be hard. I want to err on the side of positivity.
Definitely Winthrop. I agree.
I will interject. I was on the committee, so I've been paying no attention and have no understanding of the
True, my bad. So am I. So you know what?
Sorry. I get my one little shot in there, but I think Winthrop obviously should be considered a lock. Yeah. Blue Otter, previously what were they called? Aporia.
Yes. Yeah.
They were now Blue Otter. Yeah. I think would be my other lock. And I think I'm gonna call them a lock. Is Ole Miss. I think Ole Miss is gonna finish top 4 again and should have the points to get into promotion relegation. Whether that means they win the whole thing or just finish top 4, I think the path in front of them is very doable. For me, that means there's one spot left between some really interesting teams. CCG, TFT, FlyFam, and Lotus. There's kind of my logjam.
Yep.
I think it could be any of them. But the thing is, TFT and I think FlyFam, their only way in is winning the whole thing. And so their route is significantly harder. If I hot taked it, I would go my old team TFT. Just because I think if the players on that team are in form, you have some of the best pound for pound players in the league, right?
They have to, pretty much win it at the point. Because if they get second, I'm just thinking Lotus would have to place 5th or lower at that point, because there's a 40-point difference between them right now. And Lotus is looking, I think it would be an outside chance that sort of scenario happens. And by the way, I do want to also highlight something, because I did run the variance numbers. Sneezes makes that joke that we're on coming here we don't want to talk about. Sneezes was actually the second most accurate guy. No, third, second.
Third. I was third.
Third most, yeah. Third, but you were top 3. So, and yeah.
I was also the highest variance. So
true. Yeah. Going in. Yeah, I'm with I think I'm with Sneezes for most of this. Winthrop to me is it's funny because going into Spring OQ1, I was actually saying that Winthrop, they look a little bit inconsistent to me. Like their highs are incredibly high, but I've seen their lows be like kind of sus at times. And then they went through OQ1 and they looked actually the most stable.
I think CCG has some really good players on it too.
They do.
That's my big one. I think CCG's gonna win this tournament. Ooh. Yeah, I think like they come in at 4-1, having played with Flacone all weekend. They're gonna play with Bradley from here on out in mid lane.
That's a good argument.
Yeah. I think Bradley, like, until I see evidence otherwise, I'm going to assume Bradley's the best mid in the tournament. Like I remember the last time this guy
Bradley's
was
really
down
good.
here with Wildcard Red. He was so great as a mid
Yeah.
laner. You know, he was part of that. That was the greatest AM team of all time, really, right? They completely swept.
Yeah, Arrow and Bradley on the same roster.
Yeah, they swept
Yeah, it's a really cracked roster.
they swept every qualifier tournament, and they made the deepest run out of anybody in Proving Grounds in that era. Yeah, I think the rest of the roster is pretty stacked. I think they have a very solid chance of taking first, and are probably my pick to do so. I think from there, Winthrop and Blue Otter get there on points, assuming they don't crash and burn here. And then the question is, like, do who out of Lotus or Ole Miss end up with more points?
That's fair.
As far as best mid in the tournament goes, I do think Bradley is a good candidate, but I don't want to write off Robbie Bob.
Sudsy.
Yeah, same. I have
Robbie Bob.
I don't want to write off Robbie Bob. You know, I'm obligated because he's a former teammate of mine to stand, or former player of mine, right, to stand Robbie Bob. But I also think he's really good. He's in form. You know, been playing the game a lot, and it's I think he's the guy you got to dethrone in tier 3, right?
Agreed. Yeah,
I
think he's scaled up so much in the past. Like if this was like 2 years ago, sure, I think Bradley beats Robbie Bob, but I think Robbie Bob has stuck around. He's done his time. You know, he's much better. And in OQ1, for me, he was the best mid in that tournament. So,
if not best player.
Yeah, and it wasn't even close. The second, I'm trying to think like
best player, Yushin
was second. No, like in mid.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Yeah, like I'm just trying to think. Like I don't think Sudsy was probably like second in that tournament, but
for best mids.
Yeah, but like there was a gap. So Bradley, I mean, sure, he's coming back. You know, he's really good, but I'm sorry, like I don't have enough tape on Bradley right now to say. And players like 2 years ago who were amazing, yeah, like Dinka was amazing, but Dinka, like we also.
Bradley was also a solid top laner, like a top half top laner, like 6 months ago too. Like I think, and he's coming in from the Korea break. I feel like every time one of these guys comes back from spending some time in Korea, they are nuts. Like.
I'm trying to think of who else has come back from Korea.
Wixie did it, and then rolled back up with Peach Cats in ACL, and it looked really good.
I'm gonna be honest, I don't think Wixie was like that cracked when he came back from Korea.
Zamudo, came back from Korea, looked really good.
I thought he looked like he looked better than he was before, but no.
I think he's solid. Griffin never came back. Griffin went to Korea and got a job. Yeah,
that's the secret. He got too good. He didn't need to come back. He just stayed there. Yeah, I don't know. I agree. I think Bradley's good. But until I see him, I'm my money's on Robbie Bob, if anything, and that's kind of why I have Lotus above Old Miss there. But I think the top 6 are it's all there, and the points from last round I think is what's really making things kind of hard. Like Lotus has the extra points, so it's like
unless you can guarantee that you're going to be first place, you don't even have it in your own hands. Like you can't stop 3 or maybe even all 4 of the top 4 teams from the last tournament from making it back to top 4, right? You're only going to play one other team in the quarterfinals. It might not even be one of the teams that got top 4 last time.
Right.
You can't hold them all down, and you need to, like, unless you can guarantee that you're going to get first, you would need to somehow hold them all down to make that run and ascend.
The need to play in both and do well in both means that it's about consistency, not about a tournament where you're getting hot at the right time and like winning, right? So it definitely favors right now the top 4. And like coming from Team Fish Taco in the spring in OQs, we finished top 4 in our first OQ and still made 2 roster changes, right? We had Comp 9 in Winter, and Winter retired, and we got Daption and Robbie Bob, right? And part of it was because of how we finished, right? We kind of limped into top 4. We had a really good series against Native, and then got absolutely destroyed by, I think, Maryville. And so we were like, oh, we're top 4 on paper, but can we repeat this? And we had a big talk with the players and sorted it out and made changes. So the incentive to make changes with the 2 tournament system is really high, and it does hurt the growth of the teams and the players, right? I know BlackRock felt that their original performance, necessitated like higher seeding, and I get the frustration there from their owner and their people. I really do. But
the roster may changes.
The roster changes. You have to evaluate things as they are, and when you're losing a player like Robbie Bob and he's going to a new team, I think it's fair to move the seedings around to accommodate, right? So it's tough that you're not really judging orgs, you're just judging like the current snapshot of the roster based on how good you think all the players are. And if you had more continuity, if you had more teams like Winthrop and Maryville, and it's not an accident that they're collegiate teams, right? That mostly stuck with their players and had their players together for a year, 6 months, 9 months, it'd be easier to judge the quality of rosters and how the development of players was going. But right now it's just totally crazy. And if you finish below your expected, then you change. Or if you finish at your expected, you change because you think, oh, I'm one player away from getting better.
Yep.
And it might not be the case. And even like a team that didn't make changes, like, I don't want to pick on Native, but they were really good both tournaments. I think 4-1 both times, and just didn't get over the hump into top 4. It's a really steep hill to climb. SUPERNOVA had a big push at the end, and it was like a 5-point difference or something. It's tough. So I think evening out the system and having one tournament that's just like, this is how you qualify and here's how it works, and maybe you get an extra life. It's double elim or something. Like, I think that would be healthier for the space.
Yeah, if you have one
just
shot.
My 2 cents, but not saying the system is bad, right? I'm happy that we have a tier 3 system.
Yeah. The other kind of incentives issue here is, and I don't know this for a fact, right? I haven't talked to any team owners or anything, so to take this with a grain of salt. But I get the sense that some of the teams making bigger changes are like either like making a very compelling like plea or straight up like paying players to sit on the bench, because there's teams here that there's players that are good enough to play that are sitting on the bench right now, and the only reason that really explains it is them sitting on the bench keeps their teams the points, because it keeps the 4 of 7 together. So like thinking about like it's 4 of 7. It includes your bench.
Or the players will say these coaches are stupid.
And I think the end result is the same though, in that it's not about the player. It's not about the rosters changing. I don't think the rosters changing is an issue. I think it's the players sitting out, not
incentive does keep the player on the bench.
Sure. And I would say, I think as long as they're not like imprisoning the players with contract jail or something like that, like it's not a negative enforcement.
No, I assume if anything, it's probably the opposite. It's probably
then that's fine, right? Like the players have made the calculation in their head. Is it worth like sitting out the split in order to do this, right? And
fair, but
maybe the players
is that healthiest for the scene though? Like I might advocate like for what you said earlier, RMC, like 3 of 5 starters.
I'm going the opposite direction for like my solution. I think we go back to 2021 with the circuit
more tournaments.
Yeah. I think either works, either more or less. I think more less removes a lot of the incentivization. It removes a lot of the potential complaints because you get one shot, and hey, you guys had that shot. Because the one tournament style that Sneeze has mentioned, there's no incentivization to keep anybody because it's just one and done, right? The points reset. If you do more, then you have to pay more if you want to keep those points. And the players will have more time as well to think about whether or not they want to sit on the bench, because you have 1 weekend or 1 week to decide whether or not you want to shift on. And I know for a fact some of these players don't find a team fast enough. And so they just kind of go, I'll just sit this one out because like, I know you want me out, but I can't find a team right now. If I don't know about the incentivization, like whether they get paid for this, but I know some of them just don't mind just sitting out because they couldn't find it.
I don't know. Like I'm saying, I don't want this to be interpreted as a specific allegation at any specific team. But it's a statement in the incentive structure.
Not naming names, I'm pretty sure both of those cases have happened where a player has stayed on a roster just to chill. They know that their time in the roster is basically over, but they couldn't find a team or couldn't find a team that was worth their time.
Yes.
And there have been times when it's like, hey, dude, and I'm not saying we've done this or Team Fish Talk or anything. I'm just saying I know this has happened in the scene, right? Where it's like, hey, this is happening. Here's the incentive for you to be still on a roster. Unfortunately, it means you're not playing the split. Both those conversations have happened in the space, right?
Sure. Yeah, I've only known about the former, but with confirmation of the latter, then to me that works too. Because hey, if that player is willing to sit out for that incentive, like I think that's up to
If
each
there was
player
a
as long
longer
as it's
gap
fair
between
market.
tournaments, it wouldn't happen. I don't think. I think because
Yeah.
it's 1 week, it's like 4 or 5 days. Even if you're like a top 4, top 8 team,
Yeah.
I think it's really hard to go find a new team in 4 days.
Yeah, it's almost easier for teams like FlyFam to form where everybody wasn't playing last time.
Mhm.
And then,
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
100%. So I think I'd err towards that side of it, going back to that 2021 circuit style. I actually really like that a lot, and I thought it gave us some like really fun teams and more information to kind of just go off of. And if for players too, I feel like that's the other way of it, where it's like if you want to complain, well, you had multiple shots at this, and if you couldn't make any of them work, at that point, like, are you sure it's the format that's a problem? Or
Yeah. Well, with all that said about OQs, other OQ news is just announced today by by Rally Cry, the other organization here that starts with an R. Open qualifier coverage is saved, boys. There will be live streams of every game for Open Qualifier 2. Rally Cry has partnered with 5 community streamers to cover them. 3 of them are NACL podcasts, Salty Runback, Running the Rift, who did a lot of coverage on the last OQ asynchronously, and my other podcast, The Salt Mine. Mad Magical will also be doing coverage, and Aegis Esports will be doing coverage as well. So we have 5 different streamers for at max 4 simultaneous games. That does mean, and I can tell you I don't think this is a leak, that we're collaborating to make sure that every game gets live streamed. So every game will be live streamed. We're saved.
I think it's really good. I'm glad that we're finally live again. It's really fun. The tournament, the Swiss stage especially, is like banger, right? You'll see 5,000 emotes in the Discord when there's an upset. You know, it's a really high emotion 2 days. That's really, it's hard on players, but it's worth it, right? The feeling of winning is worth it. So glad we're live again. Glad we don't have to wait till the following Thursday to find out who won. And I'm just glad that there's more opportunities for players to get out there.
Yeah. Glad that spectator bugs fixed too, by the way, because it was even during Swiss. Unfortunately, Spectate was broken, so we were an hour behind going off of replays, and yeah, it's just impossible to avoid spoilers that way. You try as you may, it just can't be done. I know I was covering Lotus with Aegis over the weekend, and it was like I tried really, really hard to not look on Twitter and not look at the tracking sheets and not spoil the results for me. And even then, like, we get into game 2, and I'm looking at the Twitch, and I can see our viewership like climbing up, and I'm in this random Lotus versus Castleberry match.
Oh, okay, so you can
I
tell.
just see the viewership going up.
That's
like
funny.
60, 70, 80, and it's like, oh, I don't think this game ends the way it's supposed to end. There's way too many people tuning in.
That's awesome.
Yeah. But no, it'll be awesome to have that back. I think my biggest problem with how it was previously is that, like, I hate that teams had to like make this call about whether they wanted to get coverage from Running the Rift or whether they wanted to do their own POV streams or not, specifically because Riot/Rally Cry, I hear mostly Riot, were not being timely with the uploads of the VODs. So it was like opting to have your game covered or to POV stream was like very literally like exposing your footage. Nearly like it nearly doubled the prep time for your next opponent. Like if you play a Saturday game and Riot isn't going to upload the VOD until Tuesday, which is literally what happened last OQ, like, you can deny your next opponent 3 days of prep time, one of those days being Sunday, which should be the day most people have the most time. All right. Well, that's good news. Stay tuned on Twitter to find out where you can watch the OQ games coming in next weekend, and in weekends going forward. All right. Well, that said, any thoughts or hot takes for week number 7 before we get underway there? I know we talked about the future a little bit in the relegation conversation. 2 big games for DSG this week, but what are we looking at?
I have one. This might be not a hot take, but a lukewarm take. I think TLC take at least a game off Maryville. I know Maryville look red hot, white hot after their series on Fly, but TLC's on the way up, and like I said, meta's going in Spawn's favor. I want to see this guy get a quadra kill, and I want to see them take at least a game, if not two. Right? I'm conservative, right? I'm a coach. I'm looking at what I see in the games, and I think Maryville's still the better team. But if I got to pick an upset for the week, I think it's TLC over Maryville, right?
Okay, we just upgraded from lukewarm to hot. Lukewarm will still take one game. Hot is still
right.
Hot
Yeah,
is
I'll go hot. I'll say they. Let's just say
Okay.
I'll say 2-1. I'll say 2-1. I think
Scary
Maryville's
Jerry
the better.
Psycho. I can't say it. I can't believe it. It's not.
I think Maryville's better, but I have a feeling that the meta going in my boy Spawn's direction will give them that push to make the upset happen.
Okay. You know what? Yeah, the problem is I'm looking at all these matches. I think that the big sort of close ones are the DSG matches, of course, between the Mirage and Lit. So yeah, my hot take is I think Mirage might be almost mathematically out, but they upset and they beat DSG because I already kind of addressed it. I think the mid jungle matchup is good for Mirage there if they can connect. And then to add the real spice, I then say Mirage beats DSG on Friday. DSG beats Lit on Sunday, and we set up a tie scenario going into week 8 here.
Okay. Okay. Now, would you call it an upset? Because, never mind. Because I think it's tough. Well, look, I'm looking at the records. I'm seeing Mirage has more game wins, and I'm thinking, Mirage has had some tough series. They've had some lost mid-late games.
Oh, that's
but
true.
They've also played more series than DSG. So I think it's just a consequence of the schedule, to be honest with you. I want to say that these teams are pretty even, and that the problems that are causing them to have the low record are different. Obviously, right? I think DSG has a pretty good roster that's just not synergizing, where Mirage has some individual issues that are costing them games, right? Specifically, Prismo getting caught in the late game is something we talked about earlier. But 3-11 versus 5-13, it's like, is that really which one's the upset, right? I'm not sure. I think this is a closer series than it could be than it sounds on paper, right?
You just poured cold water all over me. It's a cold
Sorry, bro.
But you're right. I actually didn't even realize that Mirage Lines was actually up wins. Okay. You know what? Let's go off the walls. TL brings back APA, promotes Romer up this week, and then APA loses against. Oh,
we did.
Yeah, beats his
we did
former
hear a
team,
little bit about TL playing with Romer during the break.
Yeah,
so could happen.
Yeah,
could happen.
So you know what? That'll be my hot take. APA comes back, plays ASOL, beats Maryville.
Plays ASOL specifically.
Yep.
All right, I like it.
Okay.
We're calling champions now. I don't think I'm prepped enough to call champions.
It's APA. It's ASOL.
I'm waiting for like AOE to put it together. I think AOE could 2-0 this week if they have one of their hotter weeks. I think Fear is a tough matchup. I want to predict them against Wildcard. The last time I confidently predicted against Wildcard, I was very wrong. But I still think I don't know. They've been really good in the bottom lane. They just need like one of Onat or Zamudo to show up and give somewhere for Rosethorn to play through. I really think they should be better than they have shown so far. And I think their game record kind of reflects that more so than their series record. This is their chance to like break out of the soup and like look more like Cincy Fear, right? Like get into that B tier. I'd like to see them do it, and I'll screw it. I'll predict it.
I like it. I like the prediction. Big fan of AOE. I'll give a hot take not to that match, but not related to record. All right, since you got me in the mood for champions, I'm starting to think about champions. I think Wukong will be a contested pick in this series. I think both teams are going to play Wukong in different roles.
The Cincy Fear
in Fear AOE. In Fear AOE.
Fear AOE. Oh, okay.
Is Zamudo cooking with the top lane Wukong?
Maybe Rosethorn. Maybe Fear picks it up and moves it around. I think both teams are going to eye Wukong in the draft this weekend, and it's going to be played once for each team in the series.
Okay, I'm here for a lens center adaptation Wukong bot lane.
Oh yeah, true. Yeah, center Wukong. Heck yeah.
Might have overcooked that one, but yeah, I'd be down for that.
Hey, go for it. I think Senna can play with anything, honestly. Like I've seen Senna Yasuo, Senna Ziggs, Senna Cho'Gath. Like
Yeah.
It's the champ is too versatile, way too versatile.
Agree there. Any other topics that you guys would like to bring up here before we wrap on up the last show for at least a while? But I don't know. We've gone long here. We talked about a lot of stuff.
We have,
I'm
yeah.
pretty happy with everything.
I think I've covered everything that I want to talk about.
Sneezes, you got anything?
Just to players, right, for relegations and stuff coming up, I'm just going to reiterate my point I said earlier. If you're on the way up, stick to what's worked, stick to what got you here, have faith in yourself and your teammates, and you will promote. It's very rare that a team that keeps their play style and embraces who they are doesn't have at least some success in the promotion relegation tournament. If you're on the way down and you're facing relegation, I've been there. I feel your pain. Take a break, take some time off, reset mentally, and find a way to make it fun. Because if it's not fun, it's very, very hard to win, especially at this level of competition. So I'm pulling for everybody out there. I have friends on a bunch of these teams. I hate relegations because I've been through it and it sucks, but I want the best for everybody. So, good luck. It's like the most painful part of the year. So hang in there.
Absolutely.
Oh,
and we're going to wrap up there. Oh, go ahead, RMC.
One last thing, because, it's going to be our last episode for a while. I just want to shout out Cyanidance, our producer and editor behind the scenes. You never see her, but she's the one who makes all of this work. Thank you so much, Cyanidance, for all the work you put in. And yeah, just want to shout her out so she gets some of the credit that she deserves.
Yeah, absolutely. 100% agreement there. Thank you, Leanne, for everything you've done. We'll hopefully come back at some point in the future, but we'll see. Whatever it holds, we'll do more stuff together. We've worked together in the past. We'll work together in the future. Sneezes, last word goes to you as the guest. Anything you want to shout out? Anything you want to say?
Thank you, SUPERNOVA, for having me. RMC, always a pleasure.
Likewise.
Nice to meet you. I can't believe I also relegated a podcast. I'm just kidding. Shout out to OC. My guys are working really hard. We want to surprise people in CLO. We'll see what we do. But it's been a good journey and I'm having a good time. So appreciate people, rooting for me and keeping the scene alive. So thanks for having me.
All right. Well, that is going to do it for our last episode here, at least before the hiatus. We'll see. We could be back again in the future. But yeah, stay tuned. We'll still be tweeting takes, I'm sure. At least I will be. I don't know about RMC and Sneezes here.
Of
I'll
course.
throw you guys over to my other podcast. Check out the Salt Mine. I'll still be covering NACL over there. And yeah, we'll get these guys involved in there sometime soon, I hope. So will be a bunch of fun. But thank you to everybody who's tuned on in to Interstellar Radio so far. Hope to see you again in the future.
Bye-bye.